9-year-old is very afraid of shots. A couple of weeks ago, I took him to get his flu shot, which entailed, as it usually does, several days of increasing anxiety, and finally, when the time came, hiding. At one point, when I asked him about his fear, he said, "Well, do you like it when someone comes at you with a sharp metal object?" "Good point," I said. "No, I definitely don't like it. But I have learned over many years that I'd rather have the shot than the illness it's designed to protect us from." He wasn't convinced, but it made me think. Ambrose Redmoon says that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. In the case of vaccines, I judge that being vaccinated is more important than my fear of being jabbed by a needle. So I sit still for the shot. But plenty of other things aren't so easy for me. When conflict arises, when I'm flooded with intense emotions, overwhelmed by uncertainty, or even just restless with boredom, it's much harder for me to stay put. So much harder, in fact, that I need to practice staying over and over again. I know I won't be able to be the person I long to be if I'm not able to stay with things when they get a little bit spicy. So I meditate, and I join communities where people practice being brave together, and I try to stay present when things get tough. Over time, I get a little better at it, but I fail a lot. So I just keep practicing, because there are so many things I judge to be more important than my fear, more important than my comfort. Truth, for instance, love, justice, compassion, connection, repair, the flourishing of life. My son's experience with shots replicates itself over and over again in life. The threat of pain or onset of difficulty, the impulse to escape, and the choice we make, consciously or not, to stay or to leave. According to singer-songwriter Paul Simon, there are how many ways to leave your lover? 50. But he only lists 5. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Slipping out the back, making a new plan, hopping on the bus, dropping off the key, and not discussing much. That's a good one. We could come up with the other 45, I'm sure, and when you add all the other ways there are to leave other unpleasant situations, the number is countless. There are countless ways that we leave the difficult moment, the hard conversation, the painful truth. We're all experts at leaving, really, when you think about it. I don't know how it was for you, but in that short meditation that we did before Sean's reflection, I left probably 5 times. What about you? How many times did you leave during that meditation? What pulled you away? What was it like to come back? Sometimes we have excellent reasons for leaving a relationship, a job, a place, a community, or even the present moment. Sometimes we must leave for the safety and well-being of ourselves or others, or to preserve moral integrity. So please don't interpret what I'm saying this morning as advice to stay in unsafe, unhealthy, or unjust situations. The courage to leave in such situations is an important topic, but it's not what we're talking about today. Rather, we're talking about habitual kinds of leaving when we're not actually in danger. We're talking about the kinds of leaving that prevent us from living wholeheartedly, that prevent us from fully embodying our values, the kinds of leaving that keep us from realizing our deep yearnings for connection and liberation. There's a story from the Zen Buddhist tradition about a man riding a galloping horse. Another man, watching from the side of the road, yells out, "Where are you going?" The man on the horse yells back, "I don't know, ask breaking out of our habitual patterns, we're like the man on the horse. We're running, but not necessarily in a direction we've chosen, and not in a way that allows us to engage with the world we're rushing through. When we're driven in this way by our habit energy, our conditioned ways of running, we miss the opportunity to be intimate with life and to guide our own growth in alignment with our values. For many of us, this habit energy, this drive to be anywhere else but here, is very strong. A Buddhist friend once told me about a particular kind of meditation she did on a retreat once, and you can try this at home. Everyone was asked to sit on the very edge of their seats, perched as if they were about to get up. And the practice was to stay in that position and explore the inner experience of being on the edge of leaving. What does the impulse to get up and go feel like? What thoughts or feelings arise when we restrain the urge and simply stay put? The reason for such a practice, of course, is that it's often very hard to stay. Life is full of surprises, and some of them are terrible. So we train for the biggies, the really difficult times, by practicing in less challenging circumstances. First, we might just practice staying present when we're feeling generally okay, just trying to get a hold of that galloping horse for a few minutes. As we grow our capacity to stay present when we're not feeling particularly challenged, we can start practicing with harder experiences, setting an intention not to react in habitual ways when someone annoys us, for example, staying open and present for just a minute or two longer than we usually do. Or when a feeling arises that we just can't tolerate, we can practice staying with it for a few seconds. And the next time, maybe we can stay for a few more seconds or even a few minutes. You get the point. Like any kind of training, this practice builds capacity and skill over time, so we're more equipped for whatever it is we're hoping to do or be. At UUSM, what you're hoping to do or be is stated beautifully in your mission statement. What is it again? Great. We are a religious community of open hearts and open minds, working together to transform ourselves and the world. It's a fantastic mission statement. It captures so much that's moving and powerful about our faith. It doesn't beat around the bush, it just states the challenge right out there of our faith. Keeping our hearts and minds open is difficult, requiring us to stay present, come what may. Working together is also hard, especially when we're open to differences and willing to be transformed. That also requires that we be courageous enough to stay, to open ourselves again and again to the full range of experiences that come with community, growth, and change. And transforming the world, we focus a lot on that in Unitarian Universalism, and for good reason. There is so much that's wrong with the world right now. But here's the thing. We can't transform the world if we aren't willing to be transformed ourselves, if we aren't willing to stay with our growth pains. In some ways, it's getting harder and harder to stay. On top of the guaranteed difficulties of conflict, illness, loss, and death that are part of every human life, we're living in a time of multiple and escalating crises in our country and world. And instead of encouragement to slow down and build resilience, we are offered distraction at every turn and pressured to do more, be more, and buy more. Given this reality, some might even wonder why we'd even want to stay present. What's the point? Well, for Unitarian Universalists, the point is that we can't live the way our faith calls us to live if we can't stay present when things get tough. Our faith compels us to search for truth, to practice love, to work for justice, and to promote democracy. Unitarian Universalism commits us to grow and evolve as individuals and as a faith movement. It requires that we share the work of ministry and continuously expand our welcome. None of this is easy or even particularly comfortable. It requires a willingness to stay with the painful truth, the disagreement, the uncertainty, and the downright mess that life and community sometimes is. The other day I was talking to a fellow parent at a school event. He was telling me that when his family moved to town, they tried going to the local church, which is congregational. And that is, it governs itself democratically, much as we do in Unitarian Universalism. When this man and his family started attending that local church, the congregation was in turmoil. There was a lot of conflict at the time. Having been raised Catholic, he was surprised, dismayed even, that conflict was so apparent at the church. And it made him uncomfortable. In my church growing up, he told me, we never got to make any decisions. Our opinions didn't matter, so there was never any conflict. For him, the absence of apparent conflict was more important than having a voice in matters of the church. So he and his family left the Congregational Church and are happily settled back in Catholicism. And now please hear me, I am not sharing this story to judge in any way. I have deep respect for Catholicism and for our Catholic siblings. And I do truly understand the desire for a religious home that feels like a refuge from strife. It's just that Unitarian Universalists have made a different choice, a different trade-off. The democratic structure of our UU faith, our allegiance to the democratic process, requires that we all participate, that we all share in the joys and challenges of ministry and religious community. This guarantees the airing of different viewpoints, and it demands the honoring of different experiences. Our congregational polity requires that we work things out together, held by our covenants and guided by our shared visions and common values. This means that our religious homes, our UU congregations, are sometimes a little bit messy, or at least that we're willing to let our messes show. That we're willing to stay with each other in the mess, in the turmoil, in the honest sharing of our differences, and the transformative work of repair. Oh, my friends, we are brave. You are brave. What we do here matters in the world. Right here at UUSM, right now, in this time of uncertainty and transition, when your sanctuary is in shambles, you can train for life in this world just as it is. Messy, uncertain, glorious, conflict-ridden, always changing, and full of potential. The spiritual work required of each one of you to be here, to stay here, is exactly what is needed in the world today. So keep the faith, my friends. Be courageous with yourselves and each other. Practice staying present. Breathe. Welcome each other back. Remember your promises, your covenants. Remember that you are part of a much larger web of Unitarian Universalism, holding you, encouraging you, and needing you to stay. And when you do leave, in whatever way, remember you can always come back. Remember that staying over time looks like coming and going and coming back again, over and over. Courage doesn't always roar, writes Marianne Radmacher. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. May we slow down enough, stay present and open long enough to hear that quiet, brave voice and heed it. May it be so.